Media's Mining Weekly is interviewing Donovan Chimhandamba, the president, CEO, and founder of Nyanza Light Metals, a pioneering ilmenite beneficiation and energy transition materials project developer at the Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal. Nyanza will process ilmenite production from the mining of heavy mineral sands, which are abundant in Africa, and they will produce the 10 times higher priced TiO2 pigment for industrial coatings, architecture, paints, paper, and plastics. Hi Donovan, it's great to be able to chat to you again at this Coatings of Africa exhibition. And it's fitting given the role that titanium dioxide in pigment can play in paint and coatings. So, Chimhandamba Media's Mining Weekly would like to kick off with this opening question. What is the present state of your titanium oxide pigment project?
Yes, thanks Martin, it's always good to be here. I think last time we spoke, we were still doing site clearing, just preparing the site. Now we're quite advanced. We've started construction, effectively broken ground. We've got our piling, our EPC contractor on the ground. We're doing piling, so which marks the commencement of construction. So we've advanced quite significantly. We had hoped to be here much earlier, probably in Q1, but we got it started in Q2. And looking forward in terms of the works that we've started, the sequencing of the events is that we start with going underground, where we have to reinforce or improve the site conditions. We all know that Richards Bay IDZ is, or Richards Bay in general, is dredged land. So what you would find is that for a heavy industry like ours, you have to do a lot more piling to be able to hold in heavy industrial plants. So we have to go as below as 22 meters up to 45 meters in some instances. And we're going to put about 6,440 piles just to make sure that we have a solid foundation for the plant. So that's where we are. It will take us another 10 months to complete piling. And then after that's complete, you'll start to see the plant come up.
And when do you think you'll be in steady state, that wonderful steady state?
Yeah, the magical steady state. So we're looking at end of 2029. So we will be hot commissioning and ramping up from end of 2029. So effectively production is end of 2029.
And offtake is always big. Offtake contracts, even better. And what have been signed and sealed?
That was one of the first things that we had to do during the bankable feasibility studies before any lender could come on board. So there are key, what we call the core transaction documents. So offtake is one of them. We have 100% of our volume already committed to with credible global international traders and paying customers. On the other core agreements include the EPC contract, which effectively is what you're seeing on the ground with our Chinese partners who have built more than 41 of these plants globally. So those are two anchor contracts. The EPC contractor, who will be also part of will run the operation for a period, together with the off-takers, have provided the bankability that we needed.
And when will that broader battery materials chain come into effect?
In fact, that's a very interesting one, because when you look at, if I take a step back and talk about our broader strategy as Nyanza, we're in the business of building mineral beneficiation assets that are focused on making sure that we do not export raw minerals or critical minerals without any value addition. So if that's our agenda, the next thing is what kind of mineral beneficiation assets. So we know that the future-facing industries are primarily in three sectors. One is the battery materials, which is for your electrification and energy transition. And then the second one is AI compute infrastructure materials. When you look at your AI stack or your AI infrastructure, you've got the software side, which is your open AIs or the programming side. But then you have the AI hardware, where you have the NVIDIAs, the GPUs, the CPUs, and they've got materials they need for those things. And then you have the overall infrastructure in AI, which is your data center. So if you look at thermal and heat management system, the materials need the graphites, the lithium, the zircons. So if you now come back to our strategy of mineral beneficiation, we are building assets that look at that. Now, coming back to Nyanza, we started with titanium, but one of our key byproducts that comes out of that is copper rust, which is a precursor material used in making lithium iron phosphate. So lithium iron phosphate is now the leading cathode material for electric vehicle batteries, for energy storage systems. And we naturally have that byproduct in China. When they build the titanium plant, they build it together with the LFP plant because you have this byproduct that will pile, that will, if you don't use it in LFP, it becomes an environmental or disposal cost for the organization. So phase 2 was always in the plan, but we thought we modularize this. We start with titanium, then we follow on with that. So we are advanced in the BFS studies for that. We project that to be done by end of 2027. At end of 2028, we should be in capital raising mode. And hopefully construction should kick in 2029. And we anticipate, ideally, we want 1 to 2 years maximum difference between when the titanium plant starts production with when the LFP plant starts, because otherwise we start to stockpile this byproduct in volumes that will become a challenge in the future.
And give us an idea of the ownership, and the sources of finance.
Yeah, so we started off as, ourselves as the founders together with DBF Capital, primarily funding the feasibility studies. We brought on board Afrexim Bank in 2021, Africa Finance Corporation in 2021 as well, or 2022. And then subsequently also the Industrial Development Corporation from South Africa that came on board. And they've been principally funding all the project development work up to the point where we are now starting construction. Those same banks are also the shareholders in that, alongside other banks that we've brought on board, which I'm sure the announcements will come at the appropriate time.
And employment is huge in South Africa. How many people are you going to employ during construction and also permanently?
Yeah, so why I like this project, especially the phase 1 and phase 2, is that construction actually is the primary employer. Because when we're in steady state, the numbers drop down, but it's also high skill permanent. So if you take the titanium plant, for example, the construction phase, the first 3 to 36 months or 42 months, will have almost 3,000 construction contractors on site. So that's 3,000 families, or heads of families, or people, or families represented. And once we are finished with that, 850 will be permanently employed in the operations. But now what's nice about the way we're doing it, especially from a job perspective, is that when the lithium iron phosphate plant starts, it's also going to continue with another construction jobs for another 3 to 4 years period, which is another just over 2,000 construction jobs. And once it's permanent, maybe we're looking at about 500 to 600 permanent. So the joint complex, over a period of 8 years, the construction of the complex, you would probably see over 5,000 to 6,000 people, both in construction and some already in permanent operational jobs, which is quite massive for exactly where we are at the moment.
And finally, Donovan, what's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway is that, if I look at probably a few years back, maybe even 5 years back, we were still quite a while away from where we are, and it was quite an uphill to try and get to the end. But what I've taken now is when it comes to projects like this, is the moment that they tick over a certain point, the storyline is very clear. It's mineral beneficiation of African minerals, following producing advanced minerals facing the AI, compute, and energy transition and high performance materials. So when you look at the policy dynamics around South African policy, African governments, and even the multilateral banks around those three themes, and wanting to make sure that Africa is represented and has a strong foot in the value chain, I think that's starting to get exciting, and we're starting to see quite interesting approaches from development finance partners, from industrial sponsors, wanting to come onto the platform and say, I think with this we are able to do something much greater and much more impactful.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Donovan Chimhandamba, the president, CEO, and founder of Nyanza Light Metals, a pioneering ilmenite beneficiation and energy transition materials project developer in the Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal.